Hi, I'm John LeDrew, and since October 2016, I have interviewed over 30 people in over 60 hours of recorded interviews. I wanted to get to the core of what safety is and why it's important. This turned out to be quite an adventure. Welcome to the Agile Path. Back in October, my recorder in hand, I set off to Edinburgh for Lean Agile Scotland 2016. Hoping for engaging conversation, but still not knowing exactly what story I wanted to tell. By the end of the day, I had found that story. Safety seemed foundational, critical to almost any form of productive collaboration, yet enigmatic and resisting definition. How could something be both essential and so hard to tie down? Over the following months, that's what I set out to answer. In this episode, I try to work out what safety is and why we need it. What do people think of when they hear the word safety? What does it mean to them? What's it like to feel safe or unsafe? With a collection of personal stories and views from both team members and experienced consultants, we hope to make this an enjoyable and enlightening journey. Hold on tight and have a nice trip. This is the Agile Path. Picture this. You're in a meeting. The hum of the air conditioning is all you can hear. It drowns out your boss who, barely looking up from his laptop, extracts critical updates from each person in turn. You look round the room at your glassy-eyed colleagues. New Dad Martin is taking the opportunity to catch up on some sleep. Noticing, Jenny and Mike grin and roll their eyes. The light above Martin's head flickers. He opens his eyes, dazed, half dreaming, half awake. Your manager looks up and asks Mike for an update on ticket 4564. Your chest tightens. It's your turn next. Ticket 4572. The reason you worked 75 hours last week. The reason you'll probably be stuck here at 9 p.m. tonight. Your manager turns to you and jokingly asks if he needs to get a bed in, or have you finished yet? Everyone laughs.
I had a client that I was working with that within the first 2 days, I was emotionally abused in a actionable way, verbally abused, and I saw multiple signs of financial abuse around the organization. I saw actual stuff that could be actionable in a court of law as abuse.
That was Arlo Belshi, speaking of a client during the time he was consulting. Since then, he's cut relations with that particular client and joined Tableau, where he works in a much safer environment as their team craftsman, legacy code mender, and rabble-rouser. We'll get to his story in a moment. First though, let's zoom out a bit and take a look at the bigger picture. The American Psychological Association runs an annual study called Stress in America. In 2015, they found that 66% of Americans state that work is a somewhat or significant source of stress. In the UK, the Health and Safety Executive found in 2016, stress caused 45% of all working days lost due to sickness. That's 11.7 million days. And in 2013, the European Agency for Safety and Health at Work found that 51% of workers said that work-related stress was fairly or very common in their workplace. At the more extreme end, the International Labour Organization released a study in 2013 into the Japanese concept of overwork death, or karoshi. Literally, people working themselves to death. And karojisatsu, overwork suicide. This has been on an upward trend since 1997, and since 2013 there have been around 200 reported cases every year. Incredibly, in 2012, China Youth Daily reported that an astonishing 600,000 Chinese workers die every year due to work pressure, something they describe similarly to the Japanese karoshi. We'll take a deep dive into the numbers at the end, but for now, back to how Arlo as a coach handles his particular abusive situation.
I chose to open up and say, why? What's going on? And to pull those people aside and to feel into it and to be emotionally present. I could do that because I was an outsider consultant. I could handle 2 or 3 days of that. And then I went home and got healed and recovered with my loved ones for a while. As an employee, there's no way I could have suffered that amount of abuse and continue to be that open. The people giving the abuse at this company were not bad people. Before they joined this company, they were not emotionally abusive. I'm sure that several of them are now emotionally abusing their spouses at home and their children. This company is creating harm in people. It is creating severe mental and emotional damage to people who don't even work at the company, because it is damaging and destroying the people who do work there until they become abusers.
And looking again at the 2015 Stress in America study from the American Psychological Association, they found that when feeling stressed, 47% of participants had lost patience with their partner and 46% yelled at their kids. But you're saying, my workplace isn't as bad as that. And you're right, Arlo's situation was extreme, but let's not ignore the data. Work is a major source of stress for people across the globe, so it would seem that perhaps things don't have to be extreme in order to be stressful or unsafe. You sit at your desk, strewn with empty cans of heavily caffeinated beverages. As the caffeine infuses, your jittering hands hover over the keyboard. Staring at an open code editor, your eyes scanning the same block of code for the 100th time. You get up, walking past rows of headphone-wearing developers, the silent sound of typing all around you. Your manager glances up, looking through the glass wall of his office. Raising his eyebrows, he smiles at you hopefully. You walk past, trying not to make eye contact. You push the worn button on the drinks machine in the kitchen. The label reads, "Black Coffee." You walk back to your desk, sit down, and put on your headphones. Suddenly, you have an idea. You set your coffee down, open up your code editor, and you are straight into the problem. The solution was there all along. A hand waves in front of you. You look round and take off your headphones. So, how's it going with that ticket? I'm taking some heat from upstairs, you know. I don't mind, but I need to give them some idea of how much longer you'll need. The idea is gone as quickly as it arrived.
I spent a number of years in one organization, so I did a lot of things there. And we had a very open culture where we could really talk about almost anything at almost any time. Even if I disagreed with my manager or if people disagreed with me, we could still discuss things. And our rate of throughput was amazing. We got more stuff done in that organization than I have rarely seen since.
Joanna Rothman there, known as the Pragmatic Manager and author of many books, including Agile and Lean Program Management.
We were able to collaborate with each other. We were able to have conversations about, was this thing a good idea? Was that thing a good idea? So I had that one experience in 5 years There was nothing we could not discuss.
So it would seem in her case that the safety she experienced was because she and her colleagues were able to discuss anything, especially disagreement. But if everyone is always in conflict, that couldn't be good, could it?
Healthy dissent and conflict is a sign of safety, I would say.
I caught up with Mark Delgado, agile coach and many-time conference organiser in a London cafe.
So the people who are dissenting, they feel there's not going to be any retribution for speaking up for what they believe in. That situation where maybe a few people are saying yes and everyone else is quiet usually means that there's dissent, but it goes unexpressed, and that's unhealthy for the whole team, really. Those situations fester.
I find that there tends to be this amazing ability of elephants, that when you have an elephant in the meeting goes 3 times longer. Because everyone has to talk around the elephant. And so everybody is saying something that all sounds agreeable, but everyone else looks like they're not quite agreeing because they're nervous about that conversation is a little too close to touching on this sacred, unmentionable.
Tim Ottinger there, speaking to me at Lean Agile Scotland 2016. He's an engineer, we'll touch on that a little later, at Industrial Logic. So, it would seem that conflict is a sign of safety, but not too much. But how much is too much? Do you just know? Is safety, or the lack thereof, something we just feel, or can it be something more palpable? The time is 9:27 p.m. You sit alone in the office, the cleaner, your only company. You stare into the bottom of your empty coffee mug, turning it in your hand, watching the last drop of coffee as if, like when reading the tea leaves, the answer might just leap up at you. Your eyelids are heavy, and you feel yourself drifting off. The mug slips out of your hand, and those last few drops spill out onto your shirt. The mug falling breaks on the floor. "Don't worry, I'll get that," says the cleaner kindly. "What on earth are you doing here at this time anyway?" You shrug, smile, and roll your eyes, but you're too tired to say anything. While the cleaner, whose name you can't remember, sweeps up the mug fragments, you go for a walk through the empty office. Staring down the long aisle, the distant workstations look eerie in the morphing glow of monitor screensavers, the silence punctuated by the pings of email notifications. The movement sensors detect you, the lights flickering on, the darkened office brightening, one segment at a time. You turn and head back to your desk. When you get back, the cleaner has finished, and has taken the opportunity to clean away the empty cans on your desk and given it a wipe. Sat next to your keyboard is a hot cup of tea, a biscuit, and a post-it reading, "Hope you can get home soon, maybe this'll help, Alex." The note ends with a smiley face.
It is very easy to say make safety a prerequisite. A lot of us very thoroughly believe that. But I don't think safety or trust are things that you can see by their presence. They're things that you can only deduce by their absence.
So when I go into an organization and I start working with the team walks into the room, you can tell from the minute they walk through the door. There's no specific thing they do. There's no behavior that you can identify, but you pick it up as a human being, and you know that. You know that just by the way they look at each other, the way they talk to each other, that they're not comfortable, they don't trust one another, they don't feel safe.
That was Linda Rising, an independent consultant from Nashville, Tennessee, and author of Fearless Change and More Fearless Change. Before her was Amitai Schleier. He's a software development coach. Back over to Linda again.
the American naturalist John Muir. He was the founder of the Sierra Club. He lived in California in the 1800s, and he said something that has to do with safety and trust, diversity, accountability. John Muir said, when you try to pull out anything in the universe, you'll find that it's hooked to everything else.
So, safety is still as enigmatic as ever. How can we tie down what safety really is, or is that even possible? In 1999, Amy C. Edmondson published a paper in Administrative Science Quarterly entitled Psychological Safety and Learning Behavior in Work Teams. In it, she defines psychological safety to be a shared belief that the team is safe for interpersonal risk-taking. This tells us that the team should be safe, but what does safe actually mean? More from the paper. The term is meant to suggest neither a careless sense of permissiveness nor an unrelentingly positive affect, but rather a sense of confidence that the team will not embarrass, reject, or punish someone for speaking up. This confidence stems from mutual respect and trust among team members. So, now we're getting somewhere. But first, let's listen to Esther Darby with her definition.
I think about safety as the state where you feel like you can speak up and say your truth in a respectful and civil way without fear of ridicule and retribution. So it's really about being able to say what's going on for you, to represent your own needs, to represent your own experience without feeling like that's going to be devalued or you're going to be punished.
Esther is an independent consultant and expert in organizational dynamics and the co-author of Agile Retrospectives and Behind Closed Doors.
When I was a programmer, I had just started reporting to a new manager, and in his first staff meeting, he described a problem and asked people for ideas on how to address this issue. And there was silence. And after a few minutes, I decided I would offer an idea. And for the next several minutes was told why it was a really bad idea. It was a foolish idea and it would never work and it was stupid. At which point the earlier silence explained itself to me. The other people in the room just didn't feel safe to speak up. And there was a reason, because they would be slapped down. And I think that sort of thing is very, very common in organizations.
So, this is about it not being safe for someone to express themselves without some kind of negative reaction, be it a manager shouting at them or even just team members rejecting their ideas. But surely if someone has a bad idea, we can't just say yes to everyone, can we? To answer this, we take a diversion into the world of improvisational theatre, or impro.
In impro, first of all, there's a fundamental muscle that people need to just make stories happen. Which is the sort of yes and muscle. And when people start doing impro scenes, generally to begin with, people do what's called blocking. Someone will say, "Come in, doctor," and they say, "I'm not your doctor, I'm your, it's Mabel, your wife." Basically, stories don't happen unless you agree to the offers that you're getting.
Phelan McDermott there. He's an Olivier Award-winning director and founding member and artistic director of the Improbable Theatre Company.
When people first start improvising, they don't even know that they're saying no. So you have to go through a process where you begin to say yes, yes, yes to everything. And you have to push that muscle to become even aware that you're blocking other people's ideas, even your own ideas.
Accepting what has been presented by your partner and working with what has been handed off to you. What can I use? How can I run with this? And what can I add to it? That's the and in yes and. So it's philosophically building on what is there and handing it off for the next person to build on what's there.
Karina Cizona is a developer evangelist, conference speaker, certified sex educator, and, I discovered while speaking with her, an occasional improviser.
There's a lot we can borrow from that philosophy. Rather than shooting down each other's ideas immediately, I see at least something there that is useful, and let's try bringing that up a bit, elevating it, adding to it. How can we turn that kernel of something interesting and applicable and do more with it? And that can be very useful.
So, a core part of collaboration with improvisation is creating an environment where people say yes. What would an environment like that be like? Would you just end up with a mess, or could it actually be quite beautiful? Have we landed on the core of what safety is right there? If we observe a team that is welcoming and non-critical of one another's input, is that team safe? It's 6:32 a.m. You sit under the smoking hut outside the front of the office. You don't smoke, but it's the closest bench to the main office door. The birds have begun to wake in the morning twilight. The sky, a deep blue dotted with stars and sporadic clouds, glowing red-orange as they catch the morning sun. It's almost meditative. At precisely 5:18 a.m., you completed ticket 4572. It's deployed, working, and just perfect. You feel exhausted, but relieved. Everyone was being polite about it, but you knew another day on this and people would start asking questions. There was no point heading home. People start to roll in from about 7 a.m. You sit, triumphantly holding your mug of coffee, watching the sun come up. Your mobile phone rings.
I need you in the office right now. Did you actually finish ticket 4572 last night?
You start to answer, but they cut you
I
off.
have the CEO on the phone telling me the pit team can't connect by the VPN, and that's putting the whole Tokyo office out of action. For fuck's sake, didn't you even test it? Look, I need this sorting. I want you in my office when you get in. Getting tired of this shit.
So, you're working in a brilliant team. You feel like you can say anything. Ideas are free-flowing and there is real synergy. Hypothetically, your team have a deadline to deliver some work in the next 2 weeks. You all have concerns about this deadline. Let's hear from Mark C. Crowley. He's a leadership change agent from La Jolla, California, and wrote the best-selling book, Lead from the Heart. He spoke to me about a previous manager that introduced him to the word prodrome. In medicine, this is an early symptom that can indicate the onset of a more serious problem.
I make the commitment that I'm going to get this project done in 2 weeks. And at some point, it becomes obvious that I may not make this. At that point, what he asked for was, give me advance warning of your potential problem.
One of the things I find to quickly identify this is you do an anonymous survey, and it's got to be truly anonymous about whether people just give a thumbs up or thumbs down to what's going to make it into a release or something like that.
That was Troy McGuinness. He's an agile coach and says that when his mother asks what he does for a living, he says, I teach mathematics to executives.
We can't just blame bad managers for causing poor safety. I think we have to understand that everyone's in a different space in their life and they will react differently no matter what you do. So if they've just taken out a huge mortgage or if they're just about to have their first child, it's going to change how they portray bad information to you. You can't know in advance what's going to drive someone to hide this information. All you can do is make it clear that it's valuable information and you want to know it.
And his reaction to that wasn't to beat me up. It was so that he could be in a situation of saying, all right, is there anything I can do to help accelerate it? But also, what does that mean to the rest of the things I've got going?
I was in one situation where a senior executive said to me, "You're always on the side of making people feel safer." I said, "You've got it all wrong. I'm on the side of getting accurate data. I don't care about the people. What you're doing by shaming or blaming people is causing the data to be corrupt, and now we don't know where we are in the release process." So I think it's just bad business practice to set up that environment. I think you just start eliminating good data to manage by. I would do anything to avoid that. It's in no one's interest. The asset of value in these companies is the correct data to make a better decision going forward, and you've just destroyed it.
The only way you can have people give bad news is to know that when you give the news that they're not going to shoot the messenger. And the only way you could do that is to have psychological safety.
Let's go back to Amy Edmondson's definition for a moment. A sense of confidence that the team will not embarrass, reject, or punish someone for speaking up. So, when we have an environment that is both safe for people to bring their ideas to the table without rejection, and also raise the alarm without punishment, then it would seem we have psychological safety. During our research, we asked the question, what do you think of when you hear the word safety? Let's listen to some of those responses. Firstly, here's Doc Norton. He's the co-founder of CTO2, where he works as a process and leadership coach for organizations where software is critical.
Emotional safety is what actually comes to mind first. That is, in being able to create an environment where all of the participants feel able to be fully present, to be themselves, to be able to contribute, and to feel safe and secure in those interactions.
Safety, to me, is the inverse of contingency.
That was Amitai Schleier again, who we heard from a little earlier.
Contingency being an outcome depends very heavily on conditions such as what you do. It's that you could say pretty much anything unless you cross a pretty distant line that nobody's trying to cross, and it would not mean that you're out on your butt. So if there's safety lacking, then it would definitely make me look for not necessarily people hunched over in the fetal position in obvious physical self-defense, but something akin to it that you can get away with in an office environment where it's not quite as obvious that that's what you're doing, but that is what you're doing.
Today, when I hear the word safety, I hear excellence. Whether it's a person on their own or a team or an organization, without safety, there really is no excellence.
That's Joshua Kerievsky. Josh is the founder and CEO of Industrial Logic, where he works with Tim Ottinger, who we heard earlier. He coined the term Ansoneering. Remember, Tim is an Ansoneer. Ansoneering is a portmanteau blending Anson, the Japanese word for safety, and engineering. Josh said in his 2014 blog post with the same title that decades in the software industry has taught him that protecting people is the most important thing we can do because it frees people to take risks and unlocks their potential. All Industrial Logic consultants embody this in their role as Ansoneers. Back to Josh.
I love safety. I think it's absolutely awesome. I love great things. I love amazing outcomes, and those just don't happen without safety.
Safety is the one thing that makes work possible. At least the one thing that makes our best work possible.
That was Ryan Ripley. He's an Agile coach and host of the brilliant podcast, Agile for Humans.
If you're in a work environment where it's unsafe to be honest, or it's unsafe to speak truth, or it's unsafe to bring problems forward, how do you ever improve? How do you ever have a meaningful retrospective? Or how do you ever have a difficult conversation if safety does not exist?
So, before we finish, let's look at the bigger picture and to an important relationship. A 2001 study defined engagement as a positive, fulfilling, work-related state of mind that is characterized by vigor, dedication, and absorption. Let's look at this in a bit more detail. So, when engaged, I feel positive and fulfilled. That bit is pretty self-explanatory, but what about vigor, dedication, and absorption? In the study, they describe vigor as someone having high levels of energy who is willing to invest effort in their work and show persistence even in the face of difficulties. Dedication is when you feel significance, enthusiasm, inspiration, pride, and challenge from your work. And the final dimension, absorption, is when you are so fully concentrated and deeply engrossed in your work that time passes quickly and you have difficulty switching off. Let's summarize our definition of safety again. You're safe when you can speak your truth, raise your concerns, and give and receive constructive feedback without humiliation, rejection, or punishment. Do you think it would be possible to have true engagement without safety? I'll leave that for you to decide, but personally, I find it hard to see how it could be. It seems to me that engagement and safety are inseparable. You can't be engaged with your work in an unsafe environment. And while it's certainly possible to be disengaged and safe, I think that true safety will foster engagement. If you were to live, let's say 75 years, not a bad life, you're going to have slept for about 219,000 hours. That leaves you around 438,000 hours to have lived your life. Say you retire at 65, you'll have spent, on average, 90,000 hours working, or about 1/5 of your waking life. Do we really want to spend 20% of our lives doing something that doesn't engage us? I can hear you shouting, "No!" And I can see the concerned faces of your fellow commuters. But while we might not want to, it seems many of us, nevertheless, do. In January 2017, a Gallup survey found just 35% of the US workforce were engaged with their work. According to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, that works out to be about 93 million people, disengaged with what they are spending nearly a quarter of their waking hours doing. In 2001, Professor Arnold Backer published a paper describing the Job Demands Resources Model, or the JDR model. It posits that any job presents demands on an employee, mental, emotional, physical, etc., and can also provide resources, that is, a supportive manager, being granted autonomy, regular feedback, etc. Demands contribute to levels of strain, that's stress levels, which when high lead to burnout and poor health outcomes. Resources contribute to levels of motivation, that leads to increased engagement and higher mental resilience. What's important here is that these two processes work in parallel and affect one another. Demands reduce the effectiveness of resources to reduce strain, and resources reduce the amount of strain inflicted by job demands. Also, high levels of motivation and engagement can have a positive effect on strain levels, and vice versa. Think back to the last time you were so caught up in your work that you lost track of time. You look up at the clock and realize it's 2 a.m. Tired, you go to bed, satisfied but probably still buzzing with ideas. Now, think about another time when you were working late. Your boss would be angry if you missed that deadline. You eventually finish. The time is 2 a.m. You have to cut corners, but at least it's done. You go to bed stressed, hoping that your co-workers don't notice the low quality. You don't sleep well, still buzzing from the coffee you've been drinking just to stay awake. Even though in these examples you technically worked the same number of hours, because in the first example you were more engaged, you felt less of the effects of negative stress. I'm oversimplifying here, but the important thing is that low levels of engagement will, in the majority of cases, mean an increase in negative workplace stress. The American Psychological Association, the APA, in their 2015 Stress in America study, claims 66% of Americans think work is a somewhat or significant source of stress. And, as I mentioned before, Gallup found that 65% of the workforce were disengaged. What do you think would happen if more organizations fostered a safety culture and created environments where engaged employees can flourish? Do you think the levels of negative workplace stress might just go down? And what effect would that have on our wider community? Jumping back into the APA report again shows us that, while stressed, 47% of adults lost patience with or shouted at their spouse or partner, and 46% lost patience or yelled at their kids. The World Health Organization calls workplace stress the health epidemic of the 21st century. It's easy to depersonalize, to distance ourselves from this. It's just another thing in the news, another statistic. But this is about us. This is about you. This is every time you were too tired after work to fully engage with your children or partner. Every time you lost patience with a loved one after a long day. We can do better. We want to do great work, meaningful work. Let's build environments that we can thrive in, that support us, that inspire us, and above all, that keep us safe. You have been listening to The Agile Path. Many thanks to this episode's interviewees, Amitai Schleier, Arlo Belshi, Karina C. Zona, Doc Norton, Esther Darby, Joanna Rothman, Joshua Karievsky, Linda Rising, Mark C. Crowley, Mark Delgano, Phelan McDermott, Ryan Ripley, Tim Ottinger, and Troy McGuinness. This episode was produced by me, John LeDrew, with many, many thanks for the incredible support I've received from across the Agile community, but especially to Amitai Schleier for all the time taken reviewing scripts, listening to previews, and giving feedback. And a special thanks to my partner Lauren, who has and is putting up with the many time zone syncing late nights, script read-throughs and demos. You can visit agilepath.fm for more information about all the interviewees in this and other episodes in this season, as well as additional supplementary material accompanying each episode, including the beautiful episode art produced by the artist and mural designer, my sister, Liz LeDrew. Check out agilepath.fm/art for more info about Liz and how to get in contact with her. We love to hear your feedback and suggestions. Continue the conversation with us at AgilePathFM on Twitter and Facebook, or you can email us on hello@agilepath.fm. If you see value in what we are doing, then please leave us a review in iTunes. It only takes a moment and it helps more people find us. The music from this season was performed and composed by Austin Wintory from his album Monaco, Gentleman's Private Collection. And the theme music was composed by Austin Wintory and arranged and performed by Laura Intravia. It's also available on the same album. See agilepath.fm/safety/music for more information about the music from this season, including links to purchase the album. Next up, we'll dive into the murky depths of shame, blame, fear, and punishment. See you next time, and may you stay on your Agile Path.